Hello, everybody. Happy Thriving Thursday. It's great to be here with you all. I hope that you've had a fantastic week. And if you're joining me live or if you are listening to the recording, drop me a note. Let me know that you're with me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Carla. I'm a former management consultant turned full-time RV nomad, turned entrepreneur, and turned life and career coach. And on Thursdays, on Thriving Thursdays, I tune in from wherever our little casita, our little 84 square foot home takes us, sharing stories and reflections to help you live a fulfilled life, and more importantly, help you live your someday now. Not later, not when you retire, not when you get the next job, not when you buy a house, not whenever that next milestone is, but help you live your someday now. That is my mission. And today I am broadcasting from the beach. I hope you can see it behind me. I would have gone outside to broadcast today, but it was just a little bit too windy. But nevertheless, we are loving our time here, escaping the winter, in the warmer weather and on the beach. What can be better than that? So today I want to talk about something that I've been experiencing a lot lately. And I believe that no matter who you are and what you do or where you live, we've all experienced. And that is this experience of having our buttons being pushed, right? I'm sure that you can relate to what it feels like when your buttons are pushed. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I feel like personally in the last few weeks, I've been going through this phase where I feel like I'm allowing my buttons to be pushed more than normal. It's almost like they are like full color, full glory, clamoring to be pushed. And then a moment happens when they are pushed because of something that someone says or someone does. And there's no resistance. It just sinks right in. And I think that this particular period that I'm going through is due to the fact, this sensitivity perhaps or vulnerability is due to the fact that I am learning every day about how to be an entrepreneur. It's something that is out of my comfort zone, something that I've never done before. And so every day I am out there, putting myself out there. And I almost feel like my protective shell, if you think of like a hermit crab, very apropos here on the beach, if you think like a hermit crab, like you have this shell when you feel comfortable, when you feel in your zone. And then when you're not, like I am right now, or you're just learning new things and really putting yourself out there, this shell comes off. And so I am feeling right now like my shell is off. And I think that that is what's creating my more than normal sensitivity to things that people say or people do, and to allowing my buttons to be pushed. So I wanted to dig into this a little bit more. And so I've been doing a lot of reading this week, both from my coach training. I'm also training to be a yoga teacher, and there's a lot in there around, how to respond to moments when our buttons are being pushed. And so that's what I wanted to bring to you today. So think about a moment, in your recent life, maybe at work, maybe at home, where you can recall having that feeling, having that agitation come up within you. Maybe expectedly, maybe you expected it, maybe not. But think about that moment and what was happening in that moment, who you were with, what was being said. And while you think of that moment, I'll give you an example of where I recently felt my buttons be pushed. So this was 2 days ago, to be exact. We're on the beach, right? It's absolutely beautiful. But being on the beach also means that there's a tide. There's a tide that comes in, there's high tide at a certain hour, and we're very close to the tide. And, of course, what we're trying to avoid is being swept out to sea. And so we're constantly keeping an eye on the weather, keeping an eye on the tide to make sure that we are not swept out to sea. So last Tuesday, my husband closed his laptop and says, "Hey, I'm done with work. And so if we want to move to a different spot than where we're parked, we may want to consider doing it now." Perfectly harmless, perfectly normal comment. It is very normal for us to move constantly. But I wasn't done with work. And instead of simply saying that, hey, I'm not done with work yet, I got upset. And even though he said exactly what I told you, I'm done with work. If we want to consider moving, now might be a good time for us to do that. What I heard, not what was said, but what I heard was, Carla, your work is not as important as mine. And since you're, you own your business, you're an entrepreneur and not the main breadwinner, we should work by my schedule, not your schedule. Not at all what was being said, but it was what I heard. Clearly a button was pushed within me. So it's been bothering me that this button was pushed and that there have been other moments when my buttons have been pushed recently. So I did a little bit more of research to figure out, what is happening? Why am I feeling this? And here's what I was reminded of. Our buttons are pushed not because what the other person says is true or not. It's not about what the other person says, right? Normally facts are facts. Facts don't usually create emotions within us. What creates strong emotions within us is the judgments or the interpretations that we make of what is being said. And it's the interpretations that we make that usually actually have nothing to do with the other person and have everything to do with ourselves. That's what allows those buttons to be pushed. And in fact, it is not other people pushing our buttons. We are pushing our own buttons. We always say that, like, oh, so-and-so is pushing my buttons. No, there's something there that is triggering something within you that is allowing yourself to push your buttons. So let's bring it back to the example from earlier this week. In retrospect, I think that my button was pushed because I'm going through a transition. Like I mentioned, I'm going through this new phase of my career where I am building a business. I set my own hours and I'm still in the early phases of it, right? I'm only in month 5. And so I am not yet at the financial place where I was at my former job. It doesn't make sense. Of course I shouldn't be, right? It took me years to build towards that. I'm building from new right now. I am new. And because of what my husband said, what he said may have triggered within me these unconscious thoughts that now are conscious for me around how I relate the value that I place on money and the value of what I do with my time. And so that is something that I now realize that I need to work with a little bit and explore. And so it had absolutely nothing to do with what he said and everything to do with what was triggered inside of me and the interpretations that I was making of what he was saying to mean about me. So another really simple example to think about is at work, for example. Say that you're a really great presenter. You know that when you stand up in front of a room, you kill it. And if somebody says or makes a joke like, hey, John, you kind of didn't nail it at the last one, we're going to miss the sale or something like that. And they say it in a jokingly way. If you are secure in your ability to present, you're just going to just let it roll off. You're going to laugh it off, right? But if you are working through becoming a better presenter and it's something that you feel insecure about, then that joke is not going to roll off as easily as it would if you didn't have those doubts, right? So think about, when I asked you earlier, like, think about this moment, think about a moment at work, at home, wherever, where you felt that this anxiety or agitation rose within you. What was being said in the moment? What was the judgment that you made, not about the other person, but what was the judgment that you were making about yourself? That's really the key to why our buttons are being pushed. So, having said all that, there's a tool that I want to share with you that comes from coaching. It's also a tool that we worked on in my yoga teacher training. You may have heard of something similar. I've heard it be called RAIN, RAIN. In my yoga teacher training, we call it PPAL. Well, I call it, what do I call it? I call it SBAC. SBAC, kind of odd, but SBAC, SBAC. And what that stands for is stop, breathe, ask, and choose. So let's start with stop. When you're feeling that you're interacting with someone and you're feeling the agitation rise within you, you're irritated in the moment, You're like, oh, why did he say that? Why did she say that? Just simply stop and recognize that you're at a crossroads. You are at a moment where you can decide how you want to respond. So just simply stop and acknowledge this place of choice that you are in. After you stop or pause, breathe. And don't just breathe. Actually, and I learned this from my yoga teacher training, and I love it. It was kind of confusing at first, but it makes a lot of sense to me now. Breathe and allow yourself to feel the emotion that is coming up for you. So often we make ourselves stop, right? We'll be like, oh, I'm frustrated. I need to not feel frustrated right now. And so we make ourselves stop feeling frustrated or irritated. And what that does is that it's bottling up the emotions and not allowing them to really flow so they don't later on show up. So when you're bottling them up, those emotions might show up later on in a different interaction, right? Hello, Robert. So when you breathe, don't just breathe for the sake of breathing. Breathe and allow the emotion, almost like a wave, to go through your body. So you really experience it and allow itself to come in and move out, right? The key is to not let it stay, but just simply do its thing, come in and move out. So breathe and allow that emotion to flow as it needs to. So stop, breathe. The next step is ask. Ask yourself in the moment, what is the story that I'm telling myself? Like, I didn't do this in the moment, but I now have had a little bit of introspection and asked myself, what was the story that I was telling myself when my husband said, hey, I'm done with work. Now might be a good time for us to move. And the story had nothing to do with what he was actually saying. It had everything to do with, oh, I got a question. What to do when you're about, oh my gosh, wow. I think I have a hacker. Come in, I'm gonna delete this comment and block the user. That was rude. That's never happened to me. Whoa. So anyway, so breathe and then ask yourself, what is the story that you're trying to tell yourself? And is that story true, right? Like, what are the facts? What are the real facts? And then the last step is, once you have the facts, the real facts within you, you know what's true and what's not, choose. So are you going to react in a way that doesn't serve you, or are you going to respond in a way that actually supports the circumstance that you're in and supports the relationship at hand with the other person? So again, stop. I'm doing this right now myself. Stop, breathe, ask, what is the story that you're trying to tell yourself? What is the real story? And then simply choose. How are you going to show up? How are you going to respond? All right, everybody, I hope that this was helpful. Think about this next time that you feel your buttons are being pushed, and recognize that this is a process, right? It's not going to be perfect, right? You may go through many moments of frustration and not remember to stop, breathe, ask, and choose. We're human. But you can still retroactively think about, okay, I didn't react in the moment. I didn't respond in the way that I wanted to. How could I have shown up differently? What were the emotions that I was feeling? What was the story that I was telling myself? Simply think about it retroactively, and you will get better and better in future situations. All right. Happy Thriving Thursday, everybody. I wish you a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you next Thursday. Bye.